So welcome to Mental Health Monday on February 23rd. Our topic is neurodiversity, the lived experience. We have panel members, and I would like to introduce our panel members, starting with Vashti. Um, Vashti Raymond is a certified peer support specialist with lived experience that includes managing several neurodivergent conditions. She's a community trainer with Arizona Peer and Family Career Academy and passionate about educating both members and providers on understanding, destigmatizing, and accommodating neurominorities. Vashti, would you like to add anything to that?
Absolutely. So I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I know today we're going to be talking about a lot of topics that are very near and dear to me. It's a lot of stuff that really started and like jump started a lot of recovery for me, starting to understand how my brain works and starting to manage all of that judgment and all of those shoulds of I should be able to do this and learning actually that's not reasonable. That's not how my brain works. So maybe how do I try different instead of just trying harder?
All right, thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Veronica Welsh. She's been working in behavioral health in Northern Arizona for over 27 years, starting at the provider level in 1998 and then transitioned to Northern Arizona Regional Behavioral Health Authority, known as NARBA, in 2007. In her previous role, she worked as a medical systems analyst and acute health plan coordinator. Her current position of Office of Individual and Family Affairs Manager allows her to build partnerships with individuals, families, stakeholders to promote recovery, resiliency, and wellness. It also allows her to share information on the neurodiverse population, which has opened an area of her life that she is navigating. Veronica, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I'm just happy to be here and um I I'm always working on reducing stigma for anything that has to do with behavioral health. And this particular thing is not really in that category, but I believe that we need to reduce stigma for that as well. And yeah, I have come to realize that all those little quirks that I thought I had or other people thought I had, while I was growing up and even into adulthood, those are just me. So they don't need changing. They don't need to go away. Um, they're me, and I call myself neurospicy.
Thank you, Veronica.
Thank you.
Um, Now I'd like to introduce Jacqueline Brown. Jacqueline is the owner and CEO of Stay Golden Coaching and Consulting and a community organizer for Mobilize Recovery. In 2021, she left a 15-year career in the insurance industry to pursue coaching and advocacy. At Stay Golden, she creates workshops on personal empowerment, leadership development, and camaraderie building. Jacqueline hosts her podcast, Dark and Enlightened, conversing with guests to shed light on dark and stigmatized topics. She lives in Mesa, Arizona, loves hanging out with her husband and dogs, creating art, eating tacos, and binge watching Netflix reality shows to decompress. Jacqueline, would you like to add anything to that?
I just wanted to say thank you for having me here, and thank you everyone for being here. And I'm excited to talk about this because it's rare that there's a space dedicated to this. So thank you so much.
All right. We do have another panel member who has not shown up yet, Amanda Samsel. I'm hoping that she does show up, um, but we will proceed without her. And I'm going to turn this over to our panelists.
All right. So to do a little bit more of an organized introduction than we had last time, um, what is neurodiversity? Um, This is just a start to the definition of terms. If any of this is confusing or you'd like to learn more, I highly recommend checking out Nick Walker's essay on his website, Neuroqueer Heresies. He does a deep dive on the linguistics of it, and if that is not the most autistic thing I've ever seen, to go in and do the what is the proper way to use all of these words in a 5-page essay on it. I don't know what is. So neurodiversity is just the general diversity of human minds, the variation from brain to brain to brain. It was a term originally coined in autistic advocacy communities in the mid-1990s, and it's adapted from the term biodiversity, that idea that everybody's a little bit different. A group of people is neurodiverse if one or more members of the group differ substantially from the others in terms of their neurocognitive functioning. A person with normal being a very relative term, but person with normal cognitive functioning is neurotypical. A person who falls outside of those norms is neurodivergent. None of these terms are actually clinical or diagnosis. It's more of a social term and a way people define themselves. Any of those actual diagnostic terms are different types of neurominorities. So ADHD is a neurominority. Autism is a neurominority. PTSD, complex PTSD, any combination of those are different neurominorities. There are so many conditions and symptoms caused by neurological variation. To go through some of the acronyms on here, we have ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD, obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, FASD, DID is dissociative identity disorder, OSDD is other specified dissociative disorder. A couple that aren't listed on here are sensory processing disorder, and one, they don't discuss physical injury on here, including traumatic brain injury from car accident or otherwise, or stroke also causes differences in how the brain processes and organizes itself. The neurodiversity paradigm is the rejection of pathologizing all of these minorities. Most neurominorities are innate and natural and do not need to be cured. It needs supporting, but continuing to try and cure something that is innate to someone's biology causes a lot of stigma, causes a lot of social, I'm blanking on the word, we can embrace this, or as a society, which raises everyone up. Because for a long time, what we've been doing is pathologizing and blaming and stigmatizing and shaming, which really does nobody any good. A very common challenge with any sort of neurodiversity, neurominority, even neurotypical people experience executive function and dysfunction issues. This is a set of skills and cognitive processes that form the basis of most daily tasks. It's the part of the brain that is responsible for it is the prefrontal cortex. Some people call it like the management system or like air traffic control of the brain. When executive dysfunction is happening, it affects all areas of life. Everyone experiences it differently, and accommodations need to be individualized because of that. And again, different, not less. While executive dysfunction challenges can be debilitating, they do often come with strengths as well. You get those two sides of the coin. You know, a common one you hear of with neurodevelopmental disorders is that difficulty focusing. But once someone actually gets focused, they can go for hours and hours. They can be experts on certain tasks in ways that are unthinkable to people who don't experience that level of focus intensity. So we'll go over these in more depth later, but the 8 executive functions are working memory, which is that being able to keep information in the mind while using it. Self-monitoring, which is that like self-awareness. How do you feel? What are you thinking? What time is it? Am I hungry? All of those little like self-awareness tasks. We have planning and prioritizing. We have task initiation, which includes taking action, that includes switching tasks, that also includes not switching tasks when you need to stay focused on something. We have organization, keeping track of things both physically and mentally. Impulse control, that ability to take pause before acting. Emotional control, keeping feelings in check and managing behavior when there are big feelings at play. And flexible thinking, which is adjusting behavior and responding appropriately to unexpected changes, to different ways of thinking. So executive dysfunction is not exclusive to neurodevelopmental disorders. I know that was a misconception I had when I first started learning about this, and especially when I first went through peer support training. I was like, oh my God, do we all have ADHD? No. Executive dysfunction occurs with so many different conditions. Basically, if any part of the body or brain is unwell, you're liable to start seeing executive function issues. ADHD can be a really great resource for all of us because ADHDers tend to check all of the executive dysfunction boxes. So that community has really developed a very robust toolbox of strategies for managing all of this. Regarding mental illness and substance use recovery, it's been studied and looked at that these executive functioning challenges often keep us, not only are we more vulnerable to mental illness and substance use as neurodivergent individuals, but the executive function challenges also make it more difficult to get out of it and to fully engage in recovery. We have this difficulty, we have difficulty with decision making, which can struggle in that going from contemplation to preparation and action. We have challenges with memory. So in the maintenance stage of like, why am I doing this again? Why do I care? Why is this important to me when, there is a temptation or a trigger right in front of you? And that same hand of like that prioritization of like, what's most important to me? Is it the piece of cake right in front of me, or is it my long-term health? As well as impulsivity in that moment of like having the wherewithal to resist that temptation to relapse. A small study published in the American Journal of Addictions several years ago found that executive functioning deficits caused by long-term substance use persist long after a person stops using, usually months, but more often years. That just because we're engaging in recovery, it's similar to those sleep issues that we see with alcohol recovery and many other forms of recovery as well. All of that is related to the brain healing. So it's important for us, for providers and as supporters, to remember that like all of these things that are associated that tend to get mislabeled, tardiness, forgetting appointments, forgetting homework, inconsistent engagement, remembering to take medication. So often those get labeled as like not ready, not committed to their recovery, not motivated or uncooperative, uncompliant, when those are executive functioning challenges. That means somebody needs different support rather than just being said, well, do you really want to be in recovery? Let's talk about their planning systems. Let's talk about their organization. Let's see if we can get any strategies in place that are actually going to work with them rather than them just telling them they need to do better. So I figured we'd go through and each of our panelists can talk about our experience with each of the different categories of executive function. Would we like to leave the slides up, or would we prefer as a group to have just look at each other's faces and talk? Anyone have a preference as attendance? I've already discussed this with the panelists, and we decided to leave it to the group.
I'd like to see faces.
All right, then.
Okay, and throughout the rest of the presentation, questions are welcome. This now becomes interactive, correct?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Vashti, this is Sherry Candelaria. I have a question. If my mother had a stroke in her 50s and it was pretty severe, and there was times she would wake up and be like a child, and then there are other times she would wake up and be like an adult. Would that be considered neurodivergent?
In my opinion, yes. And I'm going to be quite honest, I have not had to learn yet about, the challenges that can be involved in a later in life stroke as well as in, Alzheimer's dementia.
Mm-hmm.
But that part of any sort of brain injury or any sort of degenerative condition is that it changes the brain. It changes what we can expect. It's going to change that range of normal behavior.
Okay, thank you.
Veronica, I know you have to leave at 11, so I want to be sure that we get your input on anything as you feel comfortable.
Thank you. And folks, I'm sorry, this thing popped up and I have to take care of it. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer. I'm happy to share some of the things that I've learned or am learning to navigate through, whatever the group would like.
And if no questions, we can start moving on to topics. So the first category I had up for discussing executive dysfunction was working memory. The way I describe it to people who don't experience it is you have your short-term memory, you have your long-term memory, and then you have this different category called working memory. It's kind of your desk in your brain where you can put out everything you're trying to think about. In a person who functions as expected, you have your table out, you can put all your different sheets of paper on your desk while you're studying and reference them, and all of that's happening inside your head. When you have executive function issues, your work desk is at a 70-degree angle. It is, you don't get to hold, you have two hands and you can maybe hold on to two pieces of paper that you can reference. Anxiety gives you push pins, but there are consequences to anxiety over time. um, I this is often why, I would be studying in the library and it's like, no, I don't share the desk at the library with people. I need the whole thing. Instead of being able to have all that information in my mind, I had to physically put it out in front of me. This also relates to like how I like, there are so many executive functioning challenges with cooking, but this is definitely one of them of like, wait, what was I supposed to be doing next? I can't remember what the recipe said, even though I just read it 2 minutes ago. And that challenge applies to so many aspects of life.
Yeah, I'll share regarding that. I too, I can read a recipe and be like, okay, or the just the instructions on a box of food, which by the way, I think the writing's getting smaller. You know, just want to put that out there. One trick is to take a picture with your phone and zoom in. Okay. Um, I have found I have great long-term memory. I mean, I can remember details, dates, phone numbers. I have recently, just in the last 6 months, started experiencing, I'll be in a conversation with somebody or looking something up and then just forget right in the middle of a conversation. I'm like, I don't know what I was saying. I don't know what we're talking about. Um, and I know some people experience that, periodically, but it's like regular with me. And it's getting a little frustrating, to be honest with you. So I have found that I literally have to write myself notes to remind myself to ask this question or look this up. Um, it affects so many things. And I do want to share one little thing. So I ordered this book regarding being neurodiverse, and so many wonderful things in there. But one of the things was after I learned that I'm neurodivergent, um, I'm learning more about myself. I'm doing research. Things are making sense now. But then I think, or other people might think, wow, so are you more neurodiverse than you used to be? It seems like you have this problem now and that problem now and this, but yes, but guess what? I had them all along. I just didn't know about them. And a lot of them I hid. So now that I'm learning about all this and I realize, hey, it's just part of who I am, um, it can be a little overwhelming and trying to, explain that to people. And when you have poor executive functioning, that makes it even harder. And we have it daily, hourly. Yeah. Thank you.
Also, to add, ongoing research is happening, but not sure that it's a causation, but there is correlation between ADHD in children and dementia in parents. That has been established. How it works, not sure. Not sure whether there is a degenerative element to ADHD, but it is something to keep in mind. And definitely, watching how my grandparents have aged, I will not be doing that to my children. Any thoughts you want to add, Jacqueline?
Yeah. As you were talking, I almost forgot what I was gonna say. So now here I am thinking about it again. Um, oh, working memory. I loved your example of anxiety as push pins because that's exactly it. And like I find that I will have something ruminating in my head, and I need to write it down. And if I don't write it down, it will continue to ruminate. And even still, that's like unpushing the pin, but it just slides down the desk a little bit. So it's still there. It's just now like kind of out of view. And it's really hard. Veronica, what you had mentioned too, like being in the middle of a conversation, being like, I don't know what I'm talking about right now. Um, one big thing that for me that I feel like impacts that is any sort of external stresses. So you both were talking about cooking, and cooking is something that I used to love to do. I love trying new recipes. I love trying hard recipes. I loved all that. And then in 2018, my brother died of an overdose. And when that happened, that whatever ADHD, I didn't know I had ADHD. And so like my brain broke. And so any sort of masking that I had going, which I didn't know was masking, but everything that I kept together perfectly and on time, and I didn't need a calendar and I didn't need all these things because everything's all up here, broke. My whole system broke. And still, it's been 7.5 years. I can't cook the way I used to. And even when I was diagnosed, it was only almost 3 years ago. So when I was 39. And so, Veronica, like you mentioned, it was almost like, oh my gosh, now all these puzzles are going into place. But as I'm getting older, I'm like, wait, am I getting worse or is it stresses? Or I don't really know what it is. So I feel that even though it's only a recent discovery, it explains so much, but then I have so many more questions, which is the most neurodiverse answer ever. Because, of course, like we always want to learn more about ourselves. I love doing that. But in the same sense, it can get frustrating because I'm like, wait, if I know more, shouldn't I be doing better? And sometimes that's where I get frustrated.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. That's um the masking thing. I I didn't know. First of all, I was very late diagnosed. I was 49. Um, so I've been masking, since childhood. And I didn't know what that was. And the masking thing it's draining. It's like being in fight or flight all the time. And when we when we stop masking, it is like completely overwhelming. Because all of a sudden everything is there. And I have found, just me personally, as I'm getting older, I don't have the ability to mask like I used to. Probably because I did it for, I don't know, 50 years and I'm tired. Um, and so I'm getting to the point now where, you know, like even with my work, I told them, I'm like, hey, this is going on and it, it can't be fixed. And it's really not a problem. It's just who I am. But I have to honor who I am. And I have to honor what I'm doing. And all that masking and all the things that we navigated through, um, yeah, it makes it very difficult once you start realizing, wow, I am like a badass because I made it through all these years, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And yes, snaps, absolutely. And like, I'm thinking to myself, gosh, I'm going on like 19 years with the company. And I did all that with masking and
Mm-hmm.
problems with functioning and everything. But at some point, I don't people well. So if I people for like a day or two, I need like 4 or 5 days of not peopling. Um,
Yes.
because it literally zaps your energy because a lot of us are also very, I don't want to say em, empathetic, sorry, but
Mm-hmm.
we pick up on things, um,
Mm-hmm.
or we feel what other people are feeling only because, we're always worried that no one likes us or we're doing something wrong. So thanks.
so we have a couple of things coming up in chat. Vashti and Jack, how old were you when you were diagnosed or realized that you were neurodiverse?
I was 39 and I'm 41 now.
So mine is complicated. Of course it is. Um, it was fourth grade, I believe, the first time someone suggested ADHD, but I didn't technically meet the diagnostic criteria. I still don't, even though I very much identify as having ADHD. I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder in seventh grade. Funnily enough, one of the first times they tried putting me on stimulant medication, because as soon as the ADHD was managed and I could actually focus, I really focused to the point that it was like 2 in the morning and my mom couldn't make me stop trying to finish the poster board presentation for the next day. um, Then also seventh grade, we figured out I have an issue with the way my eyes communicate with my brain. It's called convergence insufficiency, which made it look like I couldn't focus or like I just didn't want to read, but it's actually really hard for me to read. And then it was just this past year, so at 30, I finally got the autism diagnosis.
Thank you. Another question. One of the attendees said, Vashti, you're spot on with the substance use disorder treatment issues. How does one get through to behavioral health people with only neurotypical knowledge and neurotypical motivators as the treatment? And Veronica, I saw you nodding your head. And if you'd like to elaborate on that, feel free to come off mic.
I guess my question first would be that, are you meaning providers or people seeking support?
Oh, providers. Yes, providers having anything to say other than what you said, you need to do better. We need to wait till they want to change.
Honestly, first answer is education. Bring them to events like this. Bring us to them to talk about some of this. There are tons of online resources as well. But sometimes the best option is work on it with the people and showing that evidence to providers that like, hey, what you're doing isn't working, but what I'm doing is. That can be because so often the people seeking support, at least in my experience, are so open to it. You bring out the executive function wheel. That was actually half the time when I was working with clients, I brought out the executive functioning wheel before I brought out the 8 degrees of wellness or 8 dimensions of wellness of like, yes, we'll get there to talking about 8 dimensions of wellness, but let's talk about where is the baseline functioning challenges right now? How do you have a planner or some sort of way to organize your life? What's getting in your way on the day-to-day? Because until those things are more resolved, starting to focus on the big picture like wellness can be incredibly unrealistic.
Yeah, that's true. I've certainly asked for some things. I don't think they have time to come to some seminars like this or even to attend them. But I've talked to them about executive function and they don't know what that means. So it would take so much education, and honestly, they're not willing. They're not willing. So it just becomes ridiculous and I guess expensive. My thing now is how much is it going to cost the insurance company, and when are they going to try to do something about it, because it's expensive. But that's not getting anywhere either. But thanks, you realize how it is. It's just they're talking to, like, I mean, the person sitting there with ASD or whatever is wondering, what on earth do they mean by that? That makes no sense, and I wouldn't do anything because of that. It's just getting nowhere.
This is part of why peer support is so important, that we can take the time and like there is a peer support course. I haven't gotten to do it yet, but the hope is sometime this year that I believe it's the Drexel Institute offers like an autism specific peer support.
In Arizona?
It's the Drexel Institute. I believe it was out of Pennsylvania, but don't quote me on that.
Oh, that Drexel, yes, they're in Philadelphia.
Um,
But are you saying there's peer supports though in Arizona or not at all yet?
so it's like a secondary peer support. It's similar to the IPS, the intentional peer support, where it's like a second certification on top of that initial peer support certification. That if someone's interested, seeking that out rather than whatever other general continuing ed credits, that's an option. And it is very much on the fingers crossed, hopefully to-do list to get more of this information into the Arizona certification programs as well. Because the framework of peer support is so incredible for doing this work, of having that non-judgmental approach of like, hey, tell me what's happening for you. Help me understand, and I'm going to share some of my experience and like, tell me, does this make sense to you? Or is what you're experiencing different? And it's, even just normalizing the idea of like the really simple baseline neurodivergent things of like, yeah, no, it's okay that you have safe clothes and the clothes that like live in the back of your closet and you never wear unless it's a wedding. That's okay. That's normal for us. And just those little things of that little moments of acceptance and that help people start to feel safe. Because so many of us have the experience of that we've never felt safe in our own bodies, and no one's ever been able to help us understand why.
Yeah, there's a lot of anxiety in ASD, I think, and you're right. You're right. Yes. I hope some of you guys become peers and available out there.
And one thing that I have done with my work and my providers is because I really want to get across to people that this isn't something that's wrong with us. Okay? So I heard someone explain it one time and I use that now. So all of us with smartphones, we are either Apple or Android. Okay. I'm an Apple person. If you hand me an Android, I can't figure that out. I am so frustrated. I could break it against the wall within 30 minutes. Does that mean the Android is bad or wrong? No, it's just how it is. If an Android person tries to figure out an iPhone, same thing. We are both there. One's not right, one's not wrong. And explaining that to people and just letting them know our brains just work differently. There are some things that we are really, really good at. Better, we can pick out patterns and which by the way does not help with the sleep machine because you do the waves. Now I'm following the pattern of the waves, so I can't do that. But yes, it is just it is what it is. But it advocate for yourself, even if you bring in printouts or whatever, um, because this isn't something that I feel providers can ignore because it's a much bigger part of the population than they probably know. And I'll give you an example for my work. I have found, like, even in this meeting today, I kept looking at my picture to make sure my face was okay. Like I didn't have, I wasn't scowling or. And so when I'm in a meeting, I'm like, okay, do I look okay? not look wise, but do I look like I'm paying attention? Do they think I'm messing around? All these things. And I'm missing the meeting because I'm just like hyper focused on that. So I actually emailed our director of HR and I explained some of your employees need to be off camera so we can focus and pay attention. And I explained why. And it worked out for me. I don't know if it would work, for everyone, but that helped me. Because I was missing a lot of important information in meetings. But I was always smiling or something. So, so I'm off my soapbox now.
No, it is a very, very common neurodivergent and like late diagnosed memory for many of us of like, oh, wait, that wasn't normal that I was as a child practicing facial expressions in the bathroom mirror. I didn't know that.
Can I speak from the gallery?
Yes, please do.
First of all, peer support is why I'm here because I'm very close with Jacqueline, and she runs some groups to help our friends. Let's just say that. I put in the chat. I was diagnosed at 60, and I was put on. Here's your Adderall. Go for it. Which is probably worse than just being undiagnosed. As I learned more about what I was going through and found a provider, I am fortunate to have a provider that understands, that works with me. That's the good news. The semi-bad news is my provider has almost the exact same ADHD I do, so sometimes we go way off the charts. But peer support, there's so many things that I'm writing down that I just wanted to yell that you guys are saying because this is us. Have you guys seen the iceberg? Right? So what I did was, as I was diagnosed, I decided I would dive in and learn everything about ADHD. And then I realized that you don't have to have all of that. Think about the things that bother you and then concentrate on them. But also know that you could drift somewhere that's nowhere near what you thought your problem is. To me, RSD is a killer for me. Executive dysfunction, impulse control led me down a very dangerous path in terms of money and finances, and also led me to substance use. So I was able to put those things into perspective. Am I better now than I was? Yeah. Do I still struggle? Every day I struggle. Every day. But I know there's people out there that I can reach out to. I reached out to Jacqueline the other day. Hey, I need to talk to somebody. And thank God she was there. We probably still could be talking. I think it was last week. So peer support. Oh my God. If you have someone, anyone that you can pick up the phone and talk to. That's why I'm on with you guys today, because every single bit of what something says that I can identify with helps me process myself, but also helps me when I'm talking to someone who may be calling me for help. So I thank you guys for the opportunity. And hopefully that rang true to some people, because part of, is, I want you guys to really acknowledge what I said was really smart and really good. Shit like that goes through your head, and it stops you sometimes from being yourself. And that was what, was it? Who was just talking? Is it Abby? Who was just talking with the dog hat? There you go. This is what we.
Veronica.
Veronica.
There you go. Her perfect example.
Dog hat, yes.
The stuff you say, I'm just sitting here snapping my fingers like crazy. It's like, how many times do you're on a meeting and you look away and all of a sudden you realize it's 10 minutes later? Or I'm looking at the light that's shining in my face. Can you see my face? So what? It's just those little things that take you off the track, and all of a sudden you're gone. Do you have a trick to bring you back? Do you have a saying to bring you back? The one thing I have is the pause. If I can figure out a way to put the pause into play, then I might be able to get back on track. But maybe I won't. So then I go into the dark room and that's it. See you later. So sorry, part of it is rambling, but part of it is so close to me, what you guys are saying, that I'm just very appreciative to be able to express it. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for sharing. And we welcome that in this kind of a program. Libby, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I want to thank all the panelists because, boy, do I feel seen in this group. Same as in the last roundtable we did on neurodivergence. One thing I want to highlight, especially for those of us who are late diagnosed, is many of us might have picked up a whole basket full of psychiatric diagnoses prior to being diagnosed with neurodivergence. That was absolutely the case in my situation. I was in and out of inpatient psychiatric care from the time I was 8 years old and well into my 50s, even after I did get that diagnosis, the ADHD diagnosis. It made me very, very hesitant to seek the kind of help that I needed. It made me feel very much less than. I got a lot of internalized stigma from the experience, considering that I and many, particularly people who identify as women that I know, were diagnosed previously with borderline personality disorder. And if you picked up that diagnosis in the 70s or 80s, you were basically shut out from services altogether. Nobody would work with you. So I think that as peer supports, it is really, really important for us to be open-minded when we meet people and to look at what their real lived experience is and to see where, if we are somewhere on the spectrum or ADHD or another, have another neurodivergent diagnosis, to see if their experience resonates with us, and to approach them from our hearts, as you know, as we do as peers always, but particularly through the lens of those of us with these specific traits and personalities. That's all. Thank you guys for sharing so much. Veronica, you have my heart. Absolutely.
And thank you for bringing that up, Libby, because I believe a lot of us, especially those of us who late diagnosed, have been diagnosed with all sorts of other things. My personal experience also in and out of inpatient as an adult a couple of times. They tried treating me with medication, and surprisingly, it didn't work because I didn't have what they were trying to treat. They didn't catch on to that. So then there was just more medication and more medication and more medication. And it actually got to the point like my hair was falling out. I lost 35 pounds. And I told my doctor, I don't want to take these. They're not helping. At that point, I was told that I was going to be Title 36. Uh-huh. And I work in behavioral health, so I just want to put that out there. So I actually had a very wonderful supervisor who offered as a friend to go with me to my doctor. And getting off those medications, I did it appropriately. You know, some you have to titrate down. My world completely changed after that because all those things that they said were wrong with me weren't wrong. And all the medications that they prescribed, and I mean max dose of some of these things, it was just horrific. I was like a zombie. So again, this is a thing, like, you know, advocate for yourself or for other people because we're not the only ones. We can't be, right?
Veronica, you with the misdiagnosis, that was a very big thing for me because up until my brother passed, the idea of my mental health being in a not favorable spot wasn't even because I was very organized. I remembered everything. I did everything right. I remembered everything on time. And after the first year of my brother being gone, I started to realize that this isn't necessarily grief because a lot of my feelings started to shift towards instead of being like, oh, I wish he was here. I miss him. He's missing so much. It was me going, I wish I wasn't here. I don't want to be here anymore. Like, there's no point for me to be here. And I started to get into this big dip, and I couldn't understand, like, why did my grief feelings start to shift towards me feelings? And I finally decided to go to a doctor. And here's the other thing, too, is that if your doctor isn't asking a lot of like fact-finding questions or like motivational interviewing, I only know to tell certain things, because as someone who is an ADHD person, like, and I have CPTSD, which is even worse because those two symptoms are like, why don't we just marry and have a baby? Because they're such similar symptoms. Exactly. So it's so hard to be like, is this trauma or, well, I mean, let's be honest. So when she was asking me all this stuff, she said, oh, you definitely have PTSD, you have anxiety, things I knew. And she's like, oh, and you have depression. I was like, okay. And so I did start on an antidepressant. And while I will say that, I say it helped pulled me out of the ground, but it didn't help me sit up, get up, and walk away from it. And so I went back to after about a year, I said, hey, I don't think this is it because it was one of those things like, let's try to increase the dose. It didn't feel right. So I went back down and I was like, this just still seems like I'm sitting here and I feel like there should be more movement. So then when I went to her again, she started asking me different questions. She's like, oh, yeah, so this is more ADHD, but what I realize is that when my ADHD isn't being managed appropriately, it shows up as depression, which makes tons of sense because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what to juggle. I can't handle all the things. And so once I finally got that diagnosis, I will say I had my own stigma against medication. Like I didn't want to do any medication because seeing my brother and what happened with him, seeing his addiction, I didn't want to add in any sort of prescription. So my big deal was I'm going to try to do this as naturally as possible, which I did try. I tried to see a homeopathic doctor and she had me do things and it didn't help. And being on my medication, that's okay that I'm on my medication. It was such a big thing for even to like be okay with that. But then once I like took my Vyvanse, I was like, can you get quiet? Like, are you kidding? Like my brain is just going, "Meow." You're telling me I can push everything out and do things as I plan. And that was game changer for me. But again, it's this whole thing of going back and realizing like kind of like this I feel like neurodivergent people, we do this like, look how much time I wasted by not knowing this, look how much I could have done if I had known this, look at and it's just this constant cycle of like almost beating ourselves up but then picking ourselves back up again. So it's like, hey, why'd you do that? And it's like, no, get back up, that's okay that you did that. So I definitely really want to emphasize the importance of peers and spaces like this where it's so nice to say these things and everyone goes, yes, I feel the same, versus like the blank stares of like, doesn't happen to me. I'm like, cool, great.
Jacqueline, something you said, I mean, the whole thing, there's a autistic advocate on YouTube called Mom on the Spectrum. And she
Ooh,
describes the experience of like being a high functioning, high masking neurodivergent person is kind of like, a duck swimming across the water. Like on top, it looks all calm and collected, but you look under the water and those flippers are going and it's so much work and it's so
Yes.
exhausting to
yes.
present this normal looking front.
And you bringing up autism as well. Again, I was diagnosed with ADHD. I'm realizing as I'm going through this thing that I have to be on the spectrum somewhere because I couldn't identify this. I have an internal conflict. I like structure, but I want to be able to loosen up structure if I need to. So I couldn't understand how I would have really hard things, but then sometimes there's like an asterisk of if it's this situation, maybe not. And so understanding that this might be both, that's still something I'm trying to come to terms with. And Yeah, exactly. It's like unraveling yarn. It's all together. That's how I look at it. And I'm just like, here's another knot. Okay, great. Yes, yeah, that's huge.
So folks, I'm sorry that I have to log off. I do want to recommend if you guys get a chance, there is I guess it's TikTok, but you can find it on YouTube. Lindsay Girk, she does two amazing um little song things about all of this. And I have never felt like I found my spirit animal right there because I was like, oh, I do, yeah, me, So a lot of us, before I log off, we in a crisis situation, we're amazing.
On point.
Like we could stand up there and be like, okay, we're going to organize this. You do that, you do this. But if I can't get my CD out of my CD player, I'm going to lose my mind. I have broken so many things. But in a crisis, I'm your girl.
Yes. Mhm.
So you guys have a wonderful day. I hope we can continue these conversations, Lori. I just think for all of us, it's great. And the validation helps for
Yeah.
all of us. So thanks, everyone. I'm gonna put my email in the chat real fast.
Yeah.
And thank you, Veronica.
Thanks, everyone. Have a
Thanks,
wonderful
Veronica.
day. And I always
You
tell
too.
people, stay hydrated. A lot of us forget to drink water.
Speaking to what Libby just said in the chat, though this is not the case for everyone, but at least the case for me, and like looking at the autism diagnosis, is that like OCD is the coping mechanism to help manage the neurodivergence. That's not the case for everyone, but it's very, very common for OCD and autism to come together, or for OCD to be the coping mechanism for autism, even childhood diagnosed autism. I used to, before I knew I was autistic, I would describe it as that like I'm living with the war of the OCD and the ADHD in my brain. That, ADHD is change, need for novelty, it's need for stimulus, and OCD just wants to keep everything the same. Once I found a medication that helped manage the OCD, that was when I learned that like, oh, I really am ADHD, because
Mm.
the OCD is really an extreme form of anxiety. It was a lot of push pins.
Yeah.
And it like for like up until my mid-20s, that had been my primary medication for managing my ADHD had been my OCD. And then you take that away and it's like, oh, I don't have coping skills for any of this. Oh no.
Right.
So I want to say that in the chat we have, how do you feel about tapping techniques? Some people may be familiar with thought field therapy, tapping techniques. Jacqueline, you're nodding your head.
Mhm.
Any comments on that?
I have the most ADHD answer. I love it. I forget to do it. I think that's honestly what it is. It's like it seems like creating a habit that's something good for me is very hard to do. But I will say that recently, in the last year, I've really tried to make it a habit of every morning starting my day off with like affirmations, simply because I think a lot of neurodiverse people may struggle with confidence, may struggle with self-esteem. I've always struggled with that. So trying to make sure I start my day with like calm and this is like good energy towards me has been helpful. Tapping, I love. It does benefit me. And especially, and I don't know if anyone knows this, but if you ever get into a panic attack or anxiety attack, I will take an ice pack and put it on my chest. And that immediately will chill my nervous system out. And then the tapping and stuff like that can really help in an instance where everything's starting to bubble up. Um, but yes, I wish I could remember to do it more, but I feel like it's one of those things where I have to add on one good thing for me at a time, establish a pattern, and then move on. Because if I've tried to do like, I'm gonna eat good, I'm gonna do all these things, and it doesn't work. That's overwhelming for me. So I think it's great.
Don't have that much experience with the tapping, but I have heard great things, like Jacqueline just said. It definitely is one of those things that kind of fall into like the life hacks, like biology life hacks that work for almost everyone, neurodivergent or not. Similar to, box breathing typically calms everyone, no matter who you are, no matter how divergent your brain is. Similar to what Jacqueline said, capitalizing on the diving responses, which is when, the body has a reflex response when you have cold water touch the inside of your nose, your body calms down. It's way more complicated than I want to get into right now, but it's finding those things that work and figuring out how to make them easy in your life to help manage emotional dysregulation and manage the stress that a lot of us have a lot of practice jumping right into those negative thoughts and the self-deprecating self-flagellation. Anything that helps us get out of that rumination is so important. And whatever works for you. I know there's a guy I saw on TikTok recently was like, the only way I get myself to stop doom scrolling is to puff out my cheeks back and forth for a minute like this. If it works,
Yes.
it
Mhm.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah, one size doesn't fit all. And like you said, if it works, go for it. I wonder if you want to go into anything about rejection sensitive dysphoria.
So Tom mentioned that earlier, that RSD. Rejection sensitivity is, I acknowledge I'm not as well versed on this as I want to be. There's a book that recently came out that I intend to read, but I haven't read it yet. But it's like kind of a knee-jerk response. It's an oversensitivity to anything rejection related. And it doesn't even have to be an actual rejection. It just has to be perceived as rejection. Often, we've done so much criticizing of ourselves as well as been so criticized by the world around us that we just come to expect it everywhere. I've seen it described as like kind of like it's a physical response too, that like kind of like the burn that like you feel it all the way through your chest when sorry, my brain is we're past the hour mark. I'm starting to malfunction. I know for me, before I understood what it made maintaining relationships very, very difficult. And it just increased my masking skills of that. I need to be perfect. I need to be the person that everyone around me needs so I never get rejected. Which that sort of mindset often lands people in very toxic, if not fully abusive relationships.
Yeah.
Jacqueline, any thoughts?
Well, one thing as you were talking that I'm kind of pondering is because when I think of rejection sensitivity, I just feel like if someone tells me no, like that's what it is. But as we're talking through this, I hate being misunderstood. Like when I am so explicit about what I'm saying and then someone repeats it back to me, or obviously it's not what I said, but it's potentially their projection of stuff. There's nothing that drives me crazy more than that. And then it's almost like my mission to make sure you understand me because I don't want to be misinterpreted in the negative way that you are thinking. And the hardest part has been that some people are willing to understand you and some people are not. And some people listen with curiosity and some people listen to criticize. And that has been very hard for me to pull back from because I, um, not that I would fight anyone, but it's my eldest daughter desire to like, hey, if you're saying something wrong, I'm gonna prove you right, okay? This or prove me right, not you right. Prove me right. But it's so hard to do that because then so much energy is invested into proving something to someone that doesn't really matter. And yet I would invest so much energy. And it's like so much of my therapy, and I go to therapy weekly. I do EMDR therapy. I've been doing it for over 2.5 years, which has helped me a lot. But what I'm realizing is that my ADHD hyper focuses, and I know like this is, I feel like this is somewhere in the topics, but the hyper focus that I can have on making sure I'm understood can derail me from so many other things, and it gets frustrating.
It sounds like it can be absolutely exhausting, and the frustrating part, when you're working with um, behavioral health, and I'm coming back to something Anne said in chat. How do you help people understand they lack training? They have their track of we diagnose, we see it from a behavioral health lens. How can we help them short of well, I know education is a big piece, and I know that the behavioral health system did put out a training for case managers and peer support in Relias on here's a little bit about how to communicate with someone who has ASD, but that's like it's so general. It you talk about the iceberg, Tom, it hardly hits the tip of it. Um, how can we who don't understand be helped to understand, I guess is my question.
This may sound real, I was going to say, this may sound silly. TikTok videos. Sometimes someone just explaining it in very simple terms or having like a general like comparison for someone has been the only way I've been able to, and I say to, you don't have to show them that, but I find that when people break it down in terms that they can understand and have a comparison for them. So like something for me that might be very difficult would be to um call someone that I know it's going to be a long hold time and I may have to talk a lot or it might eat up a lot of my day. And that's the uncertainty is I don't know how much time this is going to take to call and do this thing. So then I have this executive dysfunction to where I don't want to do it because it might take too much time. So trying to take that where someone might be like, it's just calling someone to what is something that they struggle to do because of whatever fear that they might have and helping them understand that like our fear may not sound valid to another person, but it is to us. Just like if I think someone's fear is not valid for like, oh, well, I don't want to try that olive. Like, what are you afraid of? It's an olive. So it's like having these instances where we're all going to fear very different things, but understanding that there's probably a reason why. And helping that person understand that I'm not trying to be intentionally difficult. I'm not trying to be intentionally anything. My whole life has been trying to not be intentionally difficult, but now I'm trying to get you to understand me. And so doing it in a way where again, it's like very loose education. Like that's how I have found to help people understand.
Can I just say something too that sometimes it's really hard, even with the person you know the most, the best, your significant other. Um, you can't say, I know you get me because you know they don't. I'm sorry. I don't know how
Yeah.
else to say it.
Yeah.
Stuff I
Mhm.
talk to you guys about on here, and Jack, you even know my wife.
Yeah.
I can't go in the other room and tell her about it.
Yeah.
I can only say, this is where I am today. This is probably what it's going to be like, unless I can figure a way into a better space or a less space, because we tend to judge ourselves by what the others expect us to do. Productive. What is a productive day? Oh, I have to be productive. Productive is maybe even getting your ass out of bed, or maybe it's not even getting out of bed. It has to be what matters to you. And that's hard. And we still, I mean, I've been with my wife for 50 plus years. We've been through everything. And every day it's a challenge. I mean, there's some days when she'll just look at me and that RSD triggers. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
But I can at least get the point across. We've been working together with my therapist lately. So she can understand that when I tell you this, I'm not making and I disagree with my therapist on this. She said RSD is an excuse. I said, well, maybe can we call it the reason, not the excuse? Anyway, that's hard. So take that into the world when you struggle just even with yourself, the person most important to you. Then you think about going to work or working in advocacy or going to therapy. And then bing, bang, boom, where am I? I don't know how the hell we got down that rabbit hole, but I'm sure everybody on this call understands, right?
As far as RSD specifically with providers, it's great to explain it to providers when you're able. And I think I prioritize doing, practicing, having clients practice ahead of time. And, all right, let's role play it. What if your doctor says this? Let's do it once or twice before you're actually going into this appointment, as well as having those, it's fairly well scripted for me that it's something I'm very familiar with and I'm very comfortable saying of hang on, I need a minute. I need to let me feel this and then I'll be good. A lot of that is getting to a point where emotion isn't so intense that I can't finish my day or finish my conversation is very much work I did in therapy. I personally, there's no one size fits all. I highly recommend DBT skills training if it's available. In my opinion, a lot of the skills in DBT are the executive functioning baseline needed for any sort of productive therapy work. And there's an assumption that we all have it, but we don't, because it's not innate. Wouldn't it be nice if it all came naturally? Also, off of what Jacqueline said, no matter what the source is, whether it's a blog or an online article or TikTok, YouTube, whatever, you're looking for a content creator that cites their sources. I personally enjoy calling TikTok the misinformation vortex. There's a lot on there that's really right about neurodivergence, and there's a lot that's really wrong. One of the big ones, and honestly, I enjoy this one a lot because I've caught providers giving me misinformation about ADHD with this one before. ADHD does not involve object permanence. That is a neurodevelopmental thing that happens between, I believe it's ages 2 and 4. We don't have object permanence issues. We have working memory issues. Object permanence is where the chimpanzee can't find the ball after you put it under the cup. That it's gone, they don't realize it's still there. That's not the same as I can't find the ball because I can't remember where I put it.
Mm.
Um, as far as resources, I recommend and enjoy. Attitude Magazine is great. How to ADHD has so many YouTube videos that they've been doing content for years and years. I believe they have a it started as a PhD student on staff. I believe he has his PhD now and is still doing their video reviews. Um, let's see. I Again, memory issues. Off the top of my head was not the best idea for this. I'll bring some more next time.
What Monty said in the chat too, I love this, and this is something that we have started to incorporate because I'm a community organizer for a national nonprofit. It's called Mobilize Recovery, and every year we have an annual event, and sometimes it can be conference style, sometimes it's in different cities, but one thing that we've started to utilize at conferences is like a decompression quiet room because at conferences it can just be so chaotic. Like, yes, it's great to see you, but also I'm very overstimulated and I need to like get away from this because as much as I want to see everyone and I love the energy and I feed off that, I also need you to get out of my face for 30 minutes so I can decompress and chill out. And that's something too that learning to do boundaries with friends. Boundaries is a huge deal, I think, for any person with neurodivergence because all we want to do is make people happy. And so then we break our own boundaries constantly. I think, though, that if you want to practice boundaries with your energy and to help kind of detect, hey, I'm about to be overstimulated or this is going to be too much and I need to learn how to either step back or anything like that, I will practice boundaries with friends. Um, Especially if I tell people I'm like, hey, if you see me shut down, I was chatty, 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 and then all of a sudden I'm dead silent, I'm overstimulated. I'm not mad. I'm not any of that. But I want you to know that I have physically lost all energy to want to participate and I want to get out of here at this point. So kind of giving people a heads up as to like this is what it might look like going into a specific situation. So I'm not bombarding them like, okay, so next time you see me do this, here's this. So I kind of wait until it's like a situation. And then at that point, I may bring up, hey, just by the way, like in situations like this, I kind of get like overstimulated. So if I disappear for a bit, doesn't mean anything. I'm just disappearing for a bit. And I found that practicing that sort of like, it sounds like a loose boundary, but it's a very much a boundary, has helped me a lot. Because decompression is a big thing for me. I think Veronica had mentioned it. After socializing, I need a few days. Like my mom was here all weekend. Then it was like entertaining her and my sister. And it's like, I need everyone to leave me alone for 48 hours because this is too much and I need to decompress.
Similar but different. I'm going into a little internship thing this upcoming month, and like, because it's more of a work thing, I'm not going to brief people there immediately on all my neurodivergent needs, but I am planning on bringing myself, like having a little reference card in case I have a meltdown. That if I'm not really able to communicate for myself, I have something prepared to communicate instead.
Great idea.
And one would hope that they work with neurodivergent people all the time, they know what it was, but if they get judgy about it, that's a them issue.
Yes.
I'm doing what I need to do to take care of myself.
Thank you so much. I'm wondering if there are any final questions. If not, we'll have any closing statements. Not seeing any questions. Vashti, Jacqueline, would you like to kind of cap it off with anything in particular?
This was great. Thank you for having us. I know we only started scratching the surface of executive dysfunction stuff, so I'd love to come back and keep going on that and keep get into a little bit more of like specific challenges, potentially, it's go ahead and anybody give Lori feedback of like, would you like this more open discussion format? Or I can go into slides and make it more detailed of like some common issues and some common accommodations. What are you guys wanting for?
I think there's always a need for more education on this. And I think that let's explore other avenues for ongoing conversation and presentations in addition to this one. Jacqueline, anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for being here and participating in the conversation. So many of you, especially in the chat, really validated me. Again, we don't need validation. Yes, we do. Some level of us needs validation. So I really appreciate that. And it was just great to talk openly about this. I love talking about this in a way where I know people are curious about it, and it's not meant to like, well, what else is wrong with you? I do think our neurodiversity truly is a superpower because we can accomplish really weird things in a short amount of times if there's enough pressure on us. A lot of people can't do that. So I just really thank everyone here for being open and vulnerable because, again, this is hard to talk about as well. So thanks for everyone for sharing your experiences.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And on behalf of NAMI Yavapai and Northern Arizona Peer and Family Coalition, I just want to thank the panelists and everyone for being here. This is a program that has been sponsored by Arizona